You can. 2 words, simple yet profound. They carry the weight of possibility, the spark of courage, and the quiet whisper of hope. But let me ask you this. When was the last time you truly believed those words? Not just for someone else, but for yourself. Because here's the truth. Those 2 words are not just a mantra. They're an invitation to step into the arena of your life, to show up, to be seen, and to dare greatly. You can. Even when the voice in your head says you can't. Even when the world feels heavy and the path ahead is shrouded in doubt. You can. Not because it will be easy, but because you are worthy of the effort. Because every time you choose to rise, to try, to believe, you are rewriting the story of what's possible. This is not about perfection, it's about permission. Permission to be messy, to fall, to fail, and to still say, I am enough, because you are. And when you embrace that truth, when you lean into the discomfort of vulnerability, you unlock something extraordinary. The power to create, to connect, to change. So today, let's talk about what it means to say you can and mean it. Let's talk about the courage it takes to own your story, to stand in your truth, and to step into the unknown. Because the world doesn't need more perfection, it needs more you, and you can. You can. The power of embracing vulnerability as a source of strength lies in the courage to show up as you are, without armor, without pretense, and without the need to prove anything to anyone. It's about letting go of the idea that you have to be invincible to be worthy, that you have to have it all figured out to be loved, or that you have to hide your struggles to be respected. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of connection, creativity, and courage. It's the raw, unfiltered truth of who we are. The parts of us that ache, that doubt, that hope, and that dream. And when we lean into that truth, we discover a strength that is unshakable because it is rooted in authenticity. Think about the moments in your life when you've felt most alive, most connected, most human. Chances are, those moments were not born out of perfection or control, but out of vulnerability. Maybe it was the first time you said I love you without knowing if it would be reciprocated. Maybe it was the moment you admitted you were wrong, even though it stung. Maybe it was the day you decided to chase a dream that felt too big, too risky, too uncertain. Those moments required you to step into the unknown, to risk failure, to risk judgment, to risk rejection. And yet, they were also the moments that shaped you, that taught you, that made you who you are. Vulnerability is not easy. It's messy and uncomfortable. It requires us to confront our fears, our insecurities, and our shame. It asks us to let go of the masks we wear and the stories we tell ourselves about who we're supposed to be. But here's the thing. When we stop running from vulnerability and start embracing it, we find that it is not our enemy. It is our ally. It is the gateway to deeper relationships, to greater creativity, and to a more meaningful life. Because when we allow ourselves to be seen, truly seen, we give others permission to do the same. And in that space of shared humanity, we find connection. The strength that comes from vulnerability is not the kind of strength that shouts or demands attention. It's quiet, steady, and resilient. It's the strength to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. It's the strength to forgive yourself when you fall short. It's the strength to ask for help when you need it. It's the strength to say, I don't know, and to be okay with not having all the answers. This kind of strength is not about being fearless. It's about being brave enough to feel the fear and do it anyway. When we embrace vulnerability, we also open ourselves up to joy. It's easy to armor ourselves against pain, but when we do, we also shut ourselves off from the things that make life worth living. Love, belonging, creativity, and hope. Vulnerability allows us to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be human. It allows us to laugh until our sides hurt, to cry until we feel empty, to love with our whole hearts, and to dream without limits. It is the foundation of a life lived fully, deeply, and authentically. So, if you're waiting for the day when you'll feel strong enough to be vulnerable, let me tell you this: you already are. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all together. You just need to show up as you are and trust that you are enough. Because the truth is, vulnerability is not the absence of strength. It is the ultimate expression of it. And when you embrace it, you unlock a power within yourself that can move mountains, heal wounds, and change lives. The importance of believing in your ability to rise after failure cannot be overstated. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is a part of it. It is the messy, uncomfortable, and often painful process of learning, growing, and becoming. Yet so many of us fear failure more than we fear anything else. We tie our worth to our achievements, and when we fall short, we internalize it as proof that we are not enough. But here's the truth. Failure is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of your courage. It is evidence that you showed up, that you tried, that you dared to take a risk, and every time you rise after falling, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than you think. Failure is inevitable. It is a universal experience, something every single one of us will face at some point in our lives. But what separates those who thrive from those who stay stuck is not the absence of failure. It's the ability to get back up, to dust yourself off, to learn from what went wrong, and to try again. This is not easy. It requires resilience, self-compassion, and a deep belief in your own capacity to grow. It requires you to silence the voice in your head that says you're not good enough and replace it with one that says you're learning, you're growing, you're becoming. One of the most powerful things you can do after a failure is to reframe it. Instead of seeing it as a dead end, see it as a detour that might take you on a longer, more winding path, but one that will ultimately lead you to where you're meant to be. Every failure carries with it a lesson, a gift, an opportunity to become better, wiser, and more resilient. But to access that gift, you have to be willing to sit with the discomfort. You have to be willing to ask yourself the hard questions. What went wrong? What can I learn from this? How can I grow? And most importantly, how can I be kind to myself in the process? Self-compassion is key. It's easy to beat yourself up after a failure, to replay the mistakes over and over in your head, and to convince yourself that you'll never get it right. But self-compassion reminds you that you are human, that you are allowed to make mistakes, that you are allowed to be imperfect. It reminds you that failure does not define you, it refines you. It shapes you into someone who is more empathetic, more resilient, and more capable of handling whatever life throws your way. Believing in your ability to rise after failure also requires a shift in perspective. Instead of viewing failure as something to be avoided at all costs, see it as a necessary part of the journey. Every great success story is built on a foundation of failures. Every person you admire has faced setbacks, made mistakes, and experienced moments of doubt. But what sets them apart is their willingness to keep going, to keep trying, to keep believing in themselves even when the odds are stacked against them. This belief in your ability to rise is not something you're born with, it's something you cultivate. It's built through small, everyday acts of courage. It's built by showing up even when you're scared, by trying again even when you're not sure you'll succeed, by giving yourself grace even when you feel like you don't deserve it. And every time you do this, you strengthen that belief. You prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you ever imagined. So the next time you face failure, remember this: it's not the end of the road. It's just a bend in the path. And you have everything you need to keep going. You have the strength, the resilience, and the courage to rise. And every time you do, you become a little braver, a little stronger, and a little more ready to take on whatever comes next. The courage it takes to step into uncertainty and own your story is one of the most profound acts of bravery you can ever undertake. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. It's the space between what was and what will be. The gray area where there are no guarantees, no clear answers, and no easy paths. It's the place where fear lives, where doubt whispers, and where the temptation to turn back or stay small feels almost irresistible. But it's also the place where growth happens, where transformation begins, and where the most authentic version of yourself is waiting to be discovered. Owning your story means embracing every part of it, the triumphs and the failures, the joys and the heartbreaks, the moments of clarity and the moments of confusion. It means refusing to edit out the messy, complicated, or painful parts in order to make yourself more palatable or acceptable to others. It means standing in the truth of who you are, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when it feels like the world is asking you to be someone else. And that takes courage. Not the kind of courage that roars, but the kind that whispers. The kind that says, I am enough just as I am. Stepping into uncertainty requires you to let go of the need for control. It asks you to trust in the process, even when you can't see the outcome. It asks you to believe that even if things don't go as planned, they can still go well. This is not easy. It requires a leap of faith, a willingness to surrender the illusion of certainty and embrace the beauty of possibility. It requires you to be okay with not having all the answers, with not knowing how things will turn out, with not being able to predict the future. And yet, it's in this space of not knowing that the magic happens. It's where creativity is born, where resilience is built, and where true connection is forged. Owning your story also means confronting the parts of yourself that you'd rather keep hidden, the parts that feel unworthy, unlovable, or unworthy of belonging. It means facing your shame, your fears, and your insecurities head on and choosing to love yourself anyway. This is perhaps the hardest part of all, because it requires you to be vulnerable, to let down your guard, to show up as you are, without apology or explanation. But here's the thing, when you do this, you give others permission to do the same. And in that space of shared vulnerability, you find connection, you find belonging, you find the courage to keep going. The truth is, life is uncertain. There are no guarantees, no sure things, no promises that everything will work out the way you want it to. But that's also what makes it beautiful. It's what makes it real. It's what makes it worth living. Because when you step into uncertainty, you open yourself up to the possibility of something extraordinary. You open yourself up to growth, to change, to transformation. You open yourself up to a life that is not just lived, but deeply felt. So, if you're standing on the edge of uncertainty, wondering whether to take the leap, let me tell you this. You are braver than you think. You are stronger than you know, and you are more capable than you can imagine. The path ahead may not be clear, but that's okay, because the journey is not about knowing where you're going. It's about trusting yourself to navigate the unknown. It's about owning your story, every messy, beautiful, imperfect part of it. And it's about having the courage to step into the uncertainty, knowing that whatever happens, you have what it takes to rise. The transformative impact of self-compassion and authenticity is nothing short of revolutionary. In a world that often demands perfection, that rewards performance over presence, and that values masks over truth, choosing to be kind to yourself and to show up as you are is an act of rebellion. It's a declaration that you are enough, just as you are. That you don't need to be fixed, improved, or polished to be worthy of love and belonging. And when you make that choice, when you embrace self-compassion and authenticity, you unlock a power within yourself that can change your life. Self-compassion is not self-indulgence. It's not about letting yourself off the hook or avoiding responsibility. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and grace that you would offer to a friend. It's about recognizing that you are human, that you are imperfect, and that you are doing the best you can with what you have. It's about acknowledging your struggles without judgment, your pain without shame, and your failures without condemnation. And when you do this, you create a space within yourself for healing, for growth, and for transformation. Authenticity, on the other hand, is about showing up as you are, without pretense, without masks, and without the need to prove anything to anyone. It's about owning your story, embracing your truth, and standing in the fullness of who you are. It's about letting go of the need to be liked, to be accepted, or to fit in, and instead choosing to be real. This is not easy. It requires courage, vulnerability, and a deep sense of self-worth. But when you choose authenticity, you give yourself the gift of freedom. The freedom to be yourself, to live your truth, and to create a life that is aligned with your values and your desires. Together, self-compassion and authenticity create a powerful foundation for personal growth and transformation. When you are kind to yourself, you create a safe space within yourself to take risks, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. You become more resilient, more adaptable, and more open to change. And when you are authentic, you attract people and opportunities that are aligned with your true self. You build deeper, more meaningful relationships. You create a life that feels genuine, fulfilling, and true to who you are. But perhaps the most transformative impact of self-compassion and authenticity is the way they change the way you see yourself. When you treat yourself with kindness and show up as your true self, you begin to see yourself as worthy of love, worthy of belonging, worthy of all the good things life has to offer. You begin to believe in your own value, your own strength, and your own potential. And when you do that, you start to live differently. You start to make choices that honor your worth, that reflect your values, and that align with your true self. This is not a one-time event, it's a practice. A daily, ongoing commitment to treating yourself with kindness and showing up as your true self. Some days it will be easy, other days it will be hard. But every time you choose self-compassion over self-criticism, every time you choose authenticity over approval, you strengthen that practice. You deepen your connection to yourself, and you create a life that is not just lived, but deeply felt. So, if you're struggling to be kind to yourself, if you're finding it hard to show up as your true self, let me remind you of this. You are enough, just as you are. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all together. You just need to be you. And when you embrace that truth, when you choose self-compassion and authenticity, you unlock a power within yourself that can change your life. You become more resilient, more courageous, and more alive. And you create a life that is not just lived, but deeply, authentically, and compassionately yours. The reminder that you can is not just a phrase, but a call to action, is a powerful one. It's a declaration of possibility, a spark of hope, and a challenge to rise above the doubts, fears, and limitations that hold you back. You can is not about ignoring the obstacles in your path or pretending that everything is easy. It's about acknowledging the challenges, the setbacks, and the uncertainties, and choosing to move forward anyway. It's about believing in your own capacity to grow, to learn, and to overcome. It's about recognizing that you have within you everything you need to create the life you want, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. You can is a mindset. It's a way of seeing yourself and the world that opens up new possibilities and new opportunities. It's about shifting your focus from what you can't do to what you can do, from what's holding you back to what's pushing you forward. It's about refusing to let fear, doubt, or failure define you, and instead choosing to define yourself by your courage, your resilience, and your determination. This mindset doesn't come naturally to most of us. It's something we have to cultivate, to practice, to nurture. But when we do, it becomes a source of strength, a wellspring of hope, and a guiding light in the darkest of times. The power of you can lies in its simplicity. It's not a complicated formula or a step-by-step plan. It's a reminder, a nudge, a gentle push in the right direction. It's the voice in your head that says, keep going when everything in you wants to quit. It's the hand on your back that says, you've got this, when the weight of the world feels too heavy to bear. It's the spark of belief that says, you are capable, even when you feel anything but. And every time you listen to that voice, every time you act on that belief, you strengthen it. You prove to yourself that you are stronger, braver, and more capable than you ever imagined. But you can is not just about believing in yourself. It's also about taking action. It's about showing up, even when you're scared. It's about trying again, even when you failed. It's about taking one small step, even when the path ahead feels overwhelming. Because action is where belief becomes reality. It's where possibility becomes achievement. It's where you can becomes you did. And every time you take action, no matter how small, you build momentum. You create a ripple effect that carries you forward, one step at a time. The beauty of you can is that it's not limited by your past or your present. It's not defined by your mistakes, your failures, or your shortcomings. It's about your potential, your capacity, and your future. It's about what's possible, not what's been. And when you embrace that mindset, when you truly believe in your ability to create change, you open yourself up to a world of possibilities. You start to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You start to take risks where you once played it safe. You start to dream bigger, aim higher, and reach further. So, if you're standing at the edge of something new, something scary, something uncertain, let me remind you of this. You can. You can take that first step. You can face that fear. You can rise after that fall. You can create the life you want, the life you dream of, the life you deserve. Not because it will be easy, but because you are worth the effort. Because every time you say you can and mean it, you are choosing yourself. You are choosing courage over fear, hope over doubt, and action over inaction. And every time you do that, you become a little braver, a little stronger, and a little more ready to take on whatever comes next.